Every Thursday, Bethesda posts the Inside the Vault article. This typically contains details about future updates, but also just general details around the game overall. The article series really acts as one of their primary communication methods as far as things coming in the future. With it being Thanksgiving in the US this past Thursday, people take off for that. I didn't expect much from Bethesda, so much so that I kind of just wrote off the article, didn't think about it. Yet, to my surprise and somewhat shock, it was actually a pretty substantial one, sharing with us several images of Wastelanders. This being the massive DLC update on its way to Fallout 76 at some point in Q1 2020. So either January, February, or March. In this video, we're going to talk all about these new screenshots, and even if you've seen them, I think I could provide quite a bit of added context, just as far as one, taking them together with all of the other details we do know, but secondly, there's a few other things from data mines that do prove to be interesting. If you enjoyed this video or want to learn more about Wastelanders, I actually made a full video talking about this topic a few weeks ago, giving a good recap of a bunch of new leaks we just got, so you can check that out. Or alternatively, if you've never played Fallout and you want to try it out, there is a big discount right now going on Green Man Gaming. There's a link in the description, which is my affiliate code. If you buy games through that, I get a bit of a kickback. And if you haven't tried some of the other Fallouts or only focus on Fallout 76, now is a great time to give them a go. So although the focal point of this recent article were those new images shared and some of the details to go along with them, Bethesda also took a moment to speak pretty broadly about Wastelanders as a whole. Towards the end of the article, they do mention, as we continue to work on Wastelanders, we're growing more and more excited to show you some of what we've been working on. In the new year, we're looking to share some previews of upcoming Wastelanders content with you so that you can get a better idea of what to expect when humans return to Appalachia. Specifically mentioning how they want to show off some of the new characters, environments, weapons, enemies, and details on some of the new features or systems. So this seems to indicate a couple of things. One, based on their wording on the new year, this is probably the last Wastelanders tease we'll see in 2019, but also if they are really planning this big push right at the start of 2020 for a bunch of new teases around Wastelanders, that does get me somewhat hopeful that we don't see it at the very end of Q1, but rather maybe some point in the middle, like a February release date would be pretty awesome. Now perhaps I'm just reading way too deeply into that, but if they actually are planning some of these, what will likely be weekly updates or information dumps, or at least fairly regular updates or information dumps, you have to imagine Wastelanders won't be all that far out. But just in general, it's definitely something to look forward to. Even if you don't play Fallout 76, I think this update is an interesting one. But taking a look at some of the screenshots we see today, the first one is around the Cultist of the Mothman. We see this new church that seems to be taken over by the Cultist with the caption, "Some mysterious cultists have infiltrated Appalachia, what are they up to?" We've known for a while now that the Cultists will be one of the minor factions coming with this. They also seemingly made an appearance in one of the Fallout 76 Wastelander trailers. This image is from an in-game location at the Kanawha County Cemetery. There already you could find quite a bit of memorabilia around the Cultist. It was pretty clear they had a presence here, so it makes sense for this to turn into one of their larger bases. On the image itself, you could actually see how big of a transformation does occur here. You can see a root and bone combo are used to create the structure here. Something that is a pretty interesting question, but also kind of speculative, is how did these roots get here? That's a pretty big commonality you find throughout all of the Cultist stuff. The little effigies that are placed around everywhere seem to be made up of a similar root, but how does it grow? Wastelanders is seemingly only taking place 1 year after the events of Fallout 76's base game, and this many roots can't grow in 1 year unless there is some divine or extraterrestrial impact. Maybe something is making these roots grow a bit larger, but again, we'll find out more as this does release. Although speaking overall, it actually is a pretty cool location. It's definitely spooky and they can do a lot with the rest of the cemetery if they choose to. Next up, we have a new raider base location. Here it's described how a group of raiders are on a ever-present threat throughout the wasteland. Surely anyone who settles in a place like this is up to no good. The place in question here is another existing location that with the Rollins work camp. This one gets quite a bit of an overhaul. The existing camp in games fairly basic. There's really not much of anything going on there outside of a few bugs to take down. And as you can see in these images, it does get quite a bit of an overhaul, getting a very traditional Fallout 4 style raider camp. There's quite a bit of interesting stuff to think about around this one though. Firstly, which raiders? We know that with Fallout 76's Wastelanders update, we're getting one, the raider faction. You saw this in the trailers, it'll be somebody we could side with. But separately, we've also heard from interviews and specifically at QuakeCon, there's going to be those generic or typical raiders raiders you saw in Fallout 4, ones that'll just run around the map and really act as death fodder for us or a potential threat. Looking at the in-game characters that we can see, although they are fairly small, it is fairly blurry, they're not really dressed like Fallout 4 raiders. I mean, the one dude's wearing a leather jacket, which is definitely not raider-esque. Granted, that could be a player standing there, although they're actually literally on the other side of the map compared to where we know the main raider base will be, so they definitely could just be a generic raider camp. Outside of that, one other thing of note or interest here, you can actually see this weapon. It's kind of hard to identify what exactly it is, but it seems most close to a laser musket. And fun fact, even though you can get laser muskets from dev rooms, there is no legitimate way to get this currently in Fallout 76, so that may potentially be added. It would be pretty simple considering it's already in the game, carried over from Fallout 4. Next up, we have one that we don't really know a ton about. There's not a ton to break down with this one either. This is going to be a new automated parking garage under Watauga, named Watauga Underground. Watauga, of course, being that city with all of the robots, kind of described as the city of the future in Fallout 76. So clearly we're getting some new locations with that. This also looks like it does have a kind of raider vibe or feel to it. This is some pretty typical raider aesthetic that you see from Fallout 4, but also how there's just a robot floating around here. Maybe there actually is some quests or side quests that will take you to this location. Maybe the raiders were here but ended up getting cleared out. This definitely looks pretty cool. It seems to be holding quite a few different pristine cars, and this is interesting as it does mark one of the first major new locations we've seen with Wastelanders. The vast majority of the other teases we have gotten have actually been repurposing existing locations, while this one is a totally new interior cell. Although next up we have probably one of the most interesting images shared, also a new underground location. It's described how below Spruce Knob, Foundation settlers have discovered a cave where they can take cover from scorch beasts and make plans to rebuild Appalachia. So this one's interesting for several different reasons. First and foremost, this is below Spruce Knob. Spruce Knob's another location that didn't have a ton going on. It had some stuff there, but it wasn't like a major notable location, so it is nice to see places like that getting a bit more love. Separate from that, you also do see the Foundation settlers here, and the way this is worded is Foundation is capitalized, seeming to indicate that is the name of this faction. This is a name we've seen in the past. Back when Wastelanders was initially teased, we saw this location. This is the in-game location of Anchor Farm. It seems to be one of the main bases for the settlers, but the image version of this that was shared online was titled Fallout 76 Wastelanders E3 Foundation, seeming to indicate this location would be known as Foundation. But now that we're seeing them referred to as the Foundation settlers, it seems like that is the name of this overall faction. Perhaps this is their head base. But also, one of the ways this is interesting is if they're referred to as the Foundation settlers, could there potentially be non-Foundation settlers? Maybe another sub-faction of a separate group of settlers that does have some interest or a separate involvement in the area. But something else pretty major that not many people may pick up on that is revealed with this is about the Scorch Beasts. It describes settlers hiding underground from the Scorch Beasts, so it looks like the end of Fallout 76 was unsuccessful. That of course being when you launch the nuke, fight the Scorch Beast Queen, hoping to stop the Scorched Plague and the Scorched threat overall. We saw Scorch Beasts in the Wastelanders trailer, but their involvement in the future in this area wasn't really clear. But based on this, it seems like their threat is continuing, which is kind of interesting. It does mean that in the Fallout 76 story thus far, we were unsuccessful, or at the very least maybe we stopped the spread of it, but there still is a big scorched problem. And separately, we also weren't able to rebuild Appalachia, considering that is still apparently the main objective. As far as the image/location itself, again, being under Spruce Knob, the in-game location, it doesn't really seem like there's a ton going on here. It somehow got flooded. It also looks like it's either in this little mountain or hill. Also, hard hats are confirmed, seemingly. But then, last but not least, we do have the final image of the set, and that is from a familiar character, which we now know is going to be named Mort. Mort, of course, appeared in the last image set we saw from Wastelanders, that next to Duchess. And this one's described how you'll generally find him passing the days with Duchess at the Wayward, an inn not too far from Vault 76. So this inn is something we've heard about since QuakeCon. They described a tavern that would be not too far from Vault 76. Now it looks like these two NPCs will reside there. There's not really a ton to break down from the image here itself. It looks like perhaps a player is actually talking to Mort. Although, even though the caption is short, it does have quite a few interesting implications. For starters, we find out officially that this woman is named Duchess. Previously, the image was named Duchess, so you kind of assume that, but it wasn't confirmed until now, or it seemingly is confirmed. In Fallout 76 right now, there are several notes or holotapes referring to a Duchess in various ways. It's not clear if this is the same Duchess, teases. In those, she's described as being a criminal as well as providing tools to other criminals, so that could be an interesting bit of backstory to her. But lastly, for the name The Wayward for this inn, in the files of Fallout 76 right now, Daniel is seemingly referred to as Daniel Wayward. So maybe they just decided to use that name for a different purpose and Daniel's last name will be changed, but it would be interesting if there somehow is a connection between the Wayward Inn and Daniel Wayward. Outside of that, something just a bit broader that I'm really happy to start seeing is Bethesda's reuse of existing locations. Of the 5 new locations we get to see from these new teases, only one was significant, that was Watauga. The rest of these, although having some cool stuff going on there, were kind of forgettable, but now will seemingly play a much larger role. And if you roll the clocks back all the way to my original review of Fallout 76, one of my biggest complaints was there were so many cool looking locations that had so little going on. And it's nice to see finally with some DLC, some of these will start getting fleshed out, even if it is something as simple as a raider camp with some lore. But either way, I'm happy to see them going this route rather than just adding in a ton of additional locations and then still having all of those empty ones. So yeah, that is a pretty in-depth look at the recent tease around Fallout 76's Wastelanders DLC. What do you guys think about all of this? Does this get you more excited for Wastelanders? Does it make you the same excited or even less excited somehow? I think the fact that they kind of mention how they plan many teases in the coming months does get me hopeful that we'll see it sooner rather than later in Q1 2020. But either way, as always, again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.